Hello, everybody, and welcome to Common Sense Christianity. If you're new to this channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button and clicking the notification bell, selecting all so you get notified about future videos. In today's video, we're going to quickly examine two profound issues relating to the Bible: the nature of God depicted in the Old Testament and the unfulfilled promises of divine healing in the Bible. The scriptures present a deity who commands awe and promises miraculous interventions. Yet the character of this God and the efficacy of these promises raises significant questions. Are the Old Testament depictions consistent with a universal, benevolent deity? And why do the Bible's assurances of healing through faith often seem to fall short in the modern world? Let's take a look through scriptural evidence, contemporary studies, and a psychological lens aiming for a thoughtful and evidence-based discussion. Let's begin by questioning whether the God of the Old Testament aligns with the concept of a universal, all-powerful deity. The Old Testament portrays a God who is deeply involved in the affairs of a specific people, the Israelites, often acting in ways that seem tribal and punitive rather than universally benevolent. For example, in 2 Kings 2:23-24, when children mock the prophet Elijah for his baldness, God sends bears to maul 42 of them. This act of divine retribution appears disproportionate and localized, more akin to a regional deity protecting a chosen servant than a cosmic ruler concerned with universal justice. Similarly, in Numbers 16:31-35, God causes the earth to swallow Korah and his followers, including their families, for challenging Moses' authority. This punitive action affects even children and animals, and this suggests a deity focused on enforcing loyalty to a specific group rather than embodying a universal compassion. Contrast this with the concept of a God of the universe who would presumably govern with impartiality and benevolence across all creation. The Old Testament God's actions, such as ordering the destruction of entire nations, like in Deuteronomy 20:16-18, reflect a territorial and selective character inconsistent with a deity overseeing the cosmos. These narratives align more closely with an ancient Near Eastern deity tied to specific tribes or regions. And this suggests that the Old Testament God may reflect a culture constructed figure rather than the ultimate creator of the universe. Now let's turn to the Bible's promises of healing, which are among its boldest claims. In John 14:13-14, Jesus declares, "Whatever you ask in my name, this I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask me anything in my name, I will do it." Similarly, in Matthew 17:20 states that faith as small as a mustard seed can move mountains. And that implies that even modest faith can yield miraculous results, including healing. The New Testament provides examples of such miracles. In John 9:1-7, Jesus heals a blind man from birth. And in Acts 3:1-8, Peter heals a man lame from birth. And these are both instantaneous and without medical intervention. Yet in modern times, we see no verified, corroborated instances of such instantaneous healings. Despite centuries of prayer, no documented case exists of someone blind from birth regaining sight or a person lame from birth walking solely through divine intervention. Instead, recoveries often now involve medical interventions, surgeries, chemo, or prolonged treatments, prompting claims like God healed them through the doctors. No, this is attribution through God diluting the promise of direct miraculous healing. The absence of clear miracles, coupled with the tragic reality of children dying from these diseases, like cancer, challenges the reliability of these scriptural assurances. If God heals selectively, it raises questions of divine favoritism, undermining the notion of free will and impartial justice. Death and suffering, while part of the human existence, seem unaddressed by the sweeping promises of healing in the Bible. Scientific studies further cast doubt on the efficacy of prayer and healing. A 2006 study published by the American Heart Journal, known as the STEP trial, examined intercessory prayer for heart surgery patients. It found no significant difference in the outcomes between those who were prayed for and those who weren't, with some prayed for patients even experiencing slightly worse complications. A 2015 meta-analysis, The Lancet, reviewed multiple studies and concluded that intercessory prayer has no consistent effect on health outcomes, often performing no better than a placebo. Placebos, in fact, yield sometimes measurable improvements due to psychological effects, but even these are limited compared to medical treatments. When Christians are invited to pray for healing in the hospitals, many demur, claiming they lack the gift of healing or sufficient faith. This pattern of excuses suggests a disconnect between biblical promises and real-world outcomes, leading believers to rationalize unfulfilled expectations. Why then do so many Christians continue to uphold these promises despite apparent contradictions? This can be explained by the sunk cost fallacy, a psychological phenomenon where individuals persist in a belief or behavior due to prior investments of time, emotion, or resources, even when evidence suggests it's unwarranted. For many believers, years spent studying the scriptures, attending services, and building communities creates a deep emotional commitment to the Bible. Acknowledging its contradictions, such as unfulfilled healing promises or the problematic actions of the Old Testament God, can feel like abandoning a lifelong investment. And this fallacy drives rationalizations like attributing medical recoveries to divine intervention or excusing the lack of miracles as a matter of sufficient faith. And so the Old Testament portrays a God whose actions align more with a tribal deity than a universal creator, as seen in punitive actions like the mauling of children or the destruction of dissenters. The Bible's promises of healing, while vivid in accounts of Jesus and the apostles, find no consistent parallels in modern times, with no verified instantaneous miracles despite fervent prayers. Scientific studies confirm that prayer often yields no measurable benefit beyond a placebo, and believers' reluctance to test these promises in practice reveals a pattern of rationalization. The sunk cost fallacy explains why many cling to these beliefs despite contradictions, highlighting the power of emotional investment. I invite you to reflect on these points and share your thoughts below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.
I've come to give you life, and give you life more abundantly.